ticketed adult.
Now back to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And welcome back to Motion to Adjourn. As one of our mandates of this show is to inform the people of Bermuda and also inform the people of the region and invite the people of the region, because we're only 21 square miles, but the world is full of us.
That's right.
And today I have the distinct privilege of inviting someone from the British Virgin Islands. If you went to John Smith Bay and swam for like 1,000 miles,
They're right there.
they're right there. Right?
Yeah.
Our neighbors to the south, a business owner, community activist, former permanent secretary, means PS to me, permanent secretary, PS,
We got you.
right? News site owner, and most recently, former Speaker of the House of the Virgin Islands, my friend and distant cousin, Julian Willock,
Welcome.
Esquire.
Good afternoon. You give me a lot of title there with that Esquire. You're going to get in trouble.
I said Esquire.
Welcome,
I
Mr.
just
Villock.
I just lengthened the plank. Is what you do for it after that.
Well, it's actually a kind introduction, and I'm happy to be with you. I'm open to questions, and I'd like to say, first of all, greetings from your sister island, the British Virgin Islands.
You could just say Virgin Islands.
Well, Virgin Islands. Yes. Actually, our official name is the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
Right.
Well, you in the Virgin Islands was mentioned in Royal Gazette today, or I should say just the
really?
Gazette.
What was the topic?
Well, it was speaking on the fact that the opposition and the party in power have come together to handle some audit and accounting.
Oh, okay.
So I was, since you're here, I was like, it's a topical thing for us because we are having similar issues with our audits and our accounts, and I just thought maybe you can give some insight as to whether or not that is as kumbaya and as, I should say progressive and effective as it was reported.
Well, I have not seen the article, but I know that it's a policy or it's a goal of the government, and I'm sure you know now that we have a coalition government, what the premier is calling a unity government, but it's actually a coalition government of three parties. And I know one of the things that they have always talked about, both government and opposition, was the audited financial report. And I don't know if that's what the article was focusing on, but that is a goal of all the political class to make sure that is up to date. And it has been going on now for 5-6 years in getting our financial accounts properly audited and up to date. So if that's what the article was about, then indeed it's accurate.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, Mr. Willock, what's the just regionally for the next 3 minutes? What's the regional? What's the upcoming elections in the region?
Well, I know that constitutionally an election is due here in the Virgin Islands by May of 2023, and we have had all assurances from the political class, from the governor, from all interested parties that an election will take place. As you are well aware, we are coming out of a commission of inquiry, and certain recommendations were made coming out of that commission of inquiry, which the coalition government accepted the recommendation, except one, which is the issue of suspending our constitution and taking away our democratic rights and our freedom and allowing a UK-appointed governor and a council to run the country. And you know that has been consistently resisted by a majority of the people, both the business community, the political class, and everyone has said that while we know that the territory have got certain things wrong, just like others have got things wrong in their development, the United Kingdom, Paris, Uganda, Bermuda, Trinidad and Tobago, has gotten stuff wrong. That suspending our constitution is a no-no. In 2022, to recolonize a country is just not acceptable in a modern society where everyone is concerned about freedom and where we have people all over the world fighting for democracy. In Ukraine, the big fight there is for their own democracy, not to be invaded by Russia. The U.S. now is fighting for their own democracy, where there are people who don't feel, who don't respect the democratic principle. And like we in the Virgin Islands, we are also fighting for our democracy from our administrative power.
And thank you for that. Something very interesting that you mentioned, and it might be of interest to Bermudians who are listening, is a coalition government. Bermuda, for a long time, for as long as I can remember, has been, between the party in power and the opposition. So could you give us a little bit of a spiel on how a coalition government works and how it's been working for you guys in the Virgin Islands?
Well, this has been the second time, I believe, in our modern history that we've had to deal with a coalition government. I think it was in 1983 when there was a split between the two parties and one independent, a gentleman of blessed memory by the name of Cyril B. Romney. And he joined with one side and formed a coalition government. Since then, we have never had a coalition government, but I must tell you the history of how this come about. This coalition government came about as a part of a negotiated settlement between the then acting premier, Dr. the Honorable Natalia Wheatley, and the UK. Because remember, coming out of the Commission of Inquiry, they were insisting on recolonizing the Virgin Islands, taking away our freedom, suspending our constitution. So a part of the negotiations to get things right, to make a difference, to assure the administrative power that the BVI needs to move to a new direction, it was felt that members from the opposition will come over and join in what they have labeled a unity government. So you had three parties on the opposition. 2 out of 3 came over to the government, joined. It meant also that sitting ministers of the Virgin Islands Party who won the election in 2019 would have had to give up seats. So with the 2 members coming over from the opposition, one belonging to the opposition National Democratic Party, the other member belonging to the Virgin Islands Progressive Movement, they came over to form the unity government, which meant that 2 ministers of the Virgin Islands Party, Honorable Carvin Malone and Honorable Vincent O'Neill, would have had to give up their seats in order to form the coalition. So it was born out of a reaction to the Commission of Inquiry and negotiation not to recolonize the BVI and suspending our constitution. So that's how that came about.
Honorable former speaker, you're honorable no matter what, right? There will be some who can argue or would argue that in the face of the barrel of the UK pointing at a colony, because that's what we are, that it was best that there was a truce amongst the political class in order to save, what they call that, save democracy to some extent. Now, it would be arguable what extent the democracy actually does still exist there, but some would say, well, would we have preferred the alternative of us being run, our constitution being suspended, and directly being run by Britain.
The well, you're correct. It was a situation where it's either or. Either you show us how you can work better together and address the recommendations, or we will recolonize you via your suspension of your constitution. So it's but there are critics now who are suggesting that the governor is still calling the shots, and that the governor is still dictating to uh, members of the House of Assembly, members of the cabinet, as to what we should do and when. You know that the recommendations made by a one-man commission, Mr. Hickenbottom, imposed some deadlines that were agreed by the premier, the now premier, Dr. Wheatley, and it's a little difficult now for all those deadlines to be met. But quite interestingly, the Honorable Premier reminded us that there were deadlines that was not met on both sides. The governor had some deadlines that he had to meet, and he have not met them, and so the same with the cabinet. So there has been a little back and forth recently in terms of the deadline. But I mean, my position is that most of the recommendations that were made are good. We definitely need a new direction. We definitely need to do things differently in terms of policy, in terms of making sure that all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But in a partnership, it cannot be forced upon you. We must do these reform because they are right for us to do, not because we are at the barrel of a gun and someone is forcing us to do them. And the other thing that the people of this country, the people of the Virgin Islands, have said to the government that we must be kept involved in the happenings. And I know, there are critics who are saying that it was unfortunate and wrong for the premier to sign off on all the recommendations without coming back to the people to say this is what we're signing off of, and everyone has an opinion on that. But in a democracy, it goes both ways. You must consult your people. You must get your people along, because when there is tension, that you're going to need your people to be there with you. So I think that's one of the weaknesses, in my opinion, my humble view, of the whole process, is that the people of the country, the people of the Virgin Islands, were not totally brought along. But reforms is good. Change is always hard. And I respect the partnership with United Kingdom. But it must be a partnership based on mutual respect. It must be a partnership based on that we are all humans, we are all equal, we are striving for the same thing, and good governance does not only mean the political class must get all the pressure. Good governance must also mean the governor has to also not only talk good governance but practice good governance, so that we have a moxer where everybody is living by the rule of law, whether it's the governor, whether it's the former speaker, whether it's the construction worker, whether it's the nurse, whether it's the teacher, whether it's the CEO, captains of industry. All of us must be living by the same rule of law. And that will strengthen our democracy, because it will give people faith in our institution that okay, the political class can get away with A, B, and C, but at the same time, the governor and the deputy governor, commissioner of police, they also can't get away with certain things. So all of us should subscribe to the notion of the rule of law, and all of us should subscribe to the notion of transparency and good governance. And when you shift the burden and just leave it and target the political class only for good governance and transparency, then it tells me something is wrong. I am now become suspicious of your objective. I now become suspicious of your intention, because it's quite interesting for me that even with the Commission of Inquiry, that was only focused on the political class, but the subjects and portfolios under the governor got a pass. It wasn't touched. The Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, which is a portfolio of the governor, it was not touched. The courts, where there's legitimate questions about the quality of justice and rule of law and fairness and good practice, those were not touched. So if we're going to build a society, if we're going to continue to move forward in the Virgin Islands, especially now that the majority of people are talking about our freedom and self-determination, if we're going to engage in those conversations, then the masses must have confidence in our institution. Must have confidence in our institution.
All right. So recently I read something. Well, let me say I shouldn't say I read something. Recently, someone brought up that a lot of people like to complain about, oh, the government this, this, and people aren't really coming forward with actual workable solutions, not pie in the sky solutions that never will work. What's your thoughts on people actually coming forward, those that are running for office, whichever country you're in, coming with workable solutions?
That's a very good question, because it was so funny that a couple of weeks ago I was on another interview, and that's one of the things I said even for the upcoming election in 2023, that the easiest thing to do is criticize any government. I mean, it's always easy to point out what the faults are, what they're not doing, what they can do better, and that's human nature. But I am saying to anybody who wants to run for office in 2023, knowing where the Virgin Islands is in its political history, has to come to the table with some solution. What will you do differently? What would you do better? Because at the end of the day, all of us, whether we're in the Virgin Islands, Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, Cayman Islands, Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, London, we all want the same things. We want good roads, we want good infrastructure, we want good school, we're concerned about our safety, we're concerned about lower tax, a livable wage. All of us want the same good quality of life. So we must come to the table with solutions. And one of the things that I've said right out the bat is that the airlift in the Virgin Islands is a challenge, and we have to expand our airport. We have been talking about that now for about 10 to 15 years, and we have to expand that runway so we can get direct flights from some of the major cities, whether it's London, Miami, New York, etc. We must expand, and that's going to help. Airlift will also help our tourism sector. We have to figure out, of course, how we pay for it, whether we do a 50-50 partnership with someone, or whether we simply go get a loan and expand the airport, or whether we lease it out for X amount of years to somebody and then we take it back. So we have to be serious about things like that. The issue of revenue. For too long, we have given people the impression that governments throughout the region have a bottomless pit of money, and that is not true. Government gets their money by raising revenue, taxation. Now, I am for lower taxes, but we have to find creative ways of raising revenue, whether it's small manufacturing in our islands, attracting some of the big corporations to bring their headquarters into the Virgin Islands. You know, we have to continue to strengthen our financial services sector, which has unfortunately been under attack. And our financial services sector here in the Virgin Islands, as well as different places in the OTs, these are legitimate businesses that assist in the flow of capital throughout the world. We have to fight. We have to fight collectively sometimes when it's necessary to ensure that we support and strengthen or fight against the impression that we're some money laundering jurisdiction. I find it quite interesting that the places in the world like Paris and Paris, France, and Germany, and Luxembourg, and London, New York, Switzerland, Delaware, where actually money laundering takes place. For some strange reason, these countries and these cities never end up on blacklists,
Well, that's
but
because the
you only see our countries, or the OTs, other countries in the region, for some strange reason, end up on the blacklist. But where the actual money laundering is, they never end up on a blacklist. So something
well,
has to be wrong with that regime.
well, the and I don't want to call it the wrong alphabet because I end up getting sued. But there's an organization that gives out the blacklist or gray list or white list. You know, it sounds racial to begin with. We're straight up from the beginning. The rules are you can't put developed, quote unquote, developed countries on a blacklist. You can't put England on a blacklist. You can't put any EU nation on a blacklist.
Wow.
Right?
Well, that is something. Could you imagine that? The things that they
Only the brown and black nations end up on the blacklist. So
Yes,
whether it be
that is true.
Caribbean islands or you have some South Pacific islands or you have some African or even some. All right, let's put it this way. Prime example: you have a place like Saudi Arabia or some of those oil-rich countries that you don't know what's going on financially. They never get on the blacklist. They got too much money to be on a blacklist. There's any those that they perceive can't fight for themselves. They put on the blacklist. But we have to wrap it up in the next minute, so I'll give you a minute to just give some not final thoughts, but closing remarks to your first sitting.
Well, I will simply say that the Virgin Islands is going through a crossroad in our political development, in our political history. But I have full confidence in the people of the Virgin Islands that we will be resilient, that we will rise again, and that this too shall pass, and that we are not here fighting against anyone. We are not saying that we hate anyone. The UK, that's our administrative power. We have full respect for the partnership. After the hurricane, for example, they assisted us with items, and during the pandemic, for example, they assisted us also. But the fact of the matter is that we have built the BVI, the people, through their hard work, their blood, sweat, and tears, have built the BVI. And no one that I've come across has ever denied that we have gotten certain things wrong. And we are committed to correcting those things. But those things must be corrected in the spirit of democracy. Those things must be corrected in the spirit of consultation with the people, because we still live in a democracy. And also, we need to work closely and closer with our partners in the region, whether it's OECS, CARICOM, the UN, and also the United Kingdom. But whatever comes out of the exercise, i.e., the Commission of Inquiry, it cannot simply be a transfer of power from the political class, men and women that we elect in a fair election, and transfer that power to a governor or a civil servant. That cannot be the outcome of the exercise. The outcome of the exercise must be how we all together understand our role, whether it's the political class, people that we elect, whether it's the governor, deputy governor, senior civil servant, all of us, and how we also build the institution. We have to think about institution building and respecting the institution, respecting that we have in the territory 3 branches of government. So therefore, a commission of inquiry cannot impose something on the House of Assembly, because that's an independent branch. You can suggest and request that laws are passed. That's the role of the House. But at the end of the day, it's still up to members who are duly elected to determine whether or not those measures are passed. So, in conclusion, I'd like to again shout out to your audience, people of Bermuda, your premier, people in the region, people in the Virgin Islands. And thank you kindly for your invitation. And I hope I've made a meaningful contribution.
Yes, and you did it for free, right? I don't want anyone because you never know. You have the FCDO who might be listening, saying we paid you to say all that.
Well, you got. Let's put it this way: you got it one for free this time, but next time you'll have to call my agent.
Okay, is that the same agent that Liz Truss is?
See where you got.
All right, Miss Son. Give everybody in Seacow Bay my regard.
Yes, I will, and do come back to see us soon. You know, you're like family to us in the Virgin Islands.
What you mean, like?
Well, you are
Stop
family.
it, man.
My bad.
It's everybody's cousin, man.
No, where my mother grew up on the opposite side of his village.
Yes,
like.
yes, he's family. Yes.
Anyway, so give my regards to everyone. And Dwayne, any closing remarks?
No, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can have you back. Get an update on how BVI makes out after the election.
Just for clarity, Dwayne is on the other side of the political fence from me. So that was his interest in, what's the word you're looking for? Coalition government.
Okay, he's interested in the coalition government. Okay.
No, that was not my interest.
I'm sure Bermuda is not even thinking close to coalition government.
No.
No.
But what I will say though, during the upcoming election, it's the plan that all the parties will go back to their normal self and campaign accordingly. But that will be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How that is going to work.
We'll be here covering it.